Shell talk.
Yeah, Shell, can you just go on into your
Okay, I'm going to just move into my opening remarks then, and you'll
we'll catch
up with the slides. So I'm your moderator, Shel Horowitz. John already introduced all three of us. And to get us going, I'm going to throw out a few theses. Number one, sincerely green companies are more trustworthy and enjoy better customer or client relationships. As an example, Ben & Jerry's, whose message of sustainability and triple bottom line allowed two hippies with no business skills, working from a garage in Vermont, to co-dominate its whole market, regularly exceeding 40% market share in a marketplace with hundreds of players. If we can get the slide up for Ben & Jerry's, that would be nice. And?
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute.
Okay. Meanwhile, we'll move on to greenwashers who give a bad name to the whole movement and make it harder for the good green companies to be believed. There's slides are advancing. There's the Ben & Jerry slide. Examples include BP as well as the entire nuclear and biofuels industries. And then the third thesis is that the best green messaging emphasizes both benefits to the environment and benefits to the individual consumer, such as lower price, better quality, healthier. An example would be the buy local and buy organic movement. And finally, it's not enough to be green. You have to tell your green story to the world. You can see the slide now. Here is a company, Markel, that went recycled a very, very long time ago, but they didn't tell anyone for a long, long time. You can see their 1965 packaging, not a clue. 2010, it's the very first thing you notice when you look at their package. Markel went recycled they're a household paper product company that does toilet paper, paper towels, napkins, that sort of thing. They went recycled not in 2010, not in 2000, not even in 1975. Markel switched to recycled in 1950. But it was only in the mid-2000s that they started telling people. Once that message became a core part of their brand identity, Markel went from bankruptcy to category leader. Now, the format is that we're going to hear from each of the other panelists for about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you have a question, post it in the chat comment box at any time, and hopefully I'll have figured out how to move the slides out from on top of it. And I'll sift through and pass them to the panelists during the Q&A, and Gary Niekirk is first.
Thanks, Shel. Good morning. This is Gary Niekirk. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about Intel and what we're doing in this topic at our company. And then also I have opening up just what I think are some good tips for people that are trying to embed sustainability in their organization, into the DNA, as we've talked about, and also things to think about when you're marketing, because sometimes the marketing can get detached from kind of the core of the company and the mission, and then you start to see cracks and things, and you potentially can have problems. We can go to the next slide.
You can advance, I believe, now, Gary. Should be able to, but I'll do it.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
By the way,
so
I
Intel
don't have
is
that window, so I cannot see any of the questions coming in.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Intel's the largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world, and one of the things that's somewhat unique about a company like Intel these days in the electronics, consumer electronics, is that we make most of our stuff. We have large operations, large factories. Most of that investment is in the United States, although we do have facilities all over the world. And so much of the thing we talk about the company, what we're doing from an operations standpoint, and the footprint and carbon footprint, water, and other things are directly related to what we actually manufacture and make. Our annual revenues are just over $35 billion, so a large company, 80,000 employees around the globe. Most of those are located in the U.S. We have a very strong brand and brand recognition, and so we're very sensitive to our brand and how it's perceived, as most large companies are. And one of the things when we think about green or sustainability marketing, in a way, we look at it in two ways, and one is protecting the brand. What do we do to make sure the brand is not tarnished, and that we're doing the things that are expected of us, and we're doing the things we should be doing. And then there's the build the brand, which is what are the things that we're doing are unique or special to help in the communities, help in sustainability. So we look at both those things because we think it's important that you don't do one without the other, because if you do, you certainly can run into problems. One of our key areas of focus for society and social programs is education. We have a significant investment and effort around the world on that because we believe that certainly education is a way to lift society and to improve the conditions of everyone, and we invest over $100 million a year in that. And then we are one of the things we've done from kind of managing our climate footprint is we are the largest purchaser of green energy in the United States as certified by the EPA. So that's a program we've spent significant time and energy and resources in to do. Why don't we go ahead and move to the next slide? Guess I could do that too. Oh, great. I only have 3, so this should be easy. So here's some tips, and I think this will tee off some of the discussion we're going to have today. That first one, make sure your comm strategy aligns with your business strategy, and that's kind of a no-brainer, kind of a basic thing, but often those things can get separated as someone gets real excited about some green topic or green marketing or something like that. The second item is you are what you are, and you should stay true to your business. And if you're a business that is involved, let's say, in extractives or in oil and gas and things like that, that's a really difficult, challenging business. And to have green fairies run around and sprinkle pixie dust and try to make yourself something that you're not is unrealistic. And I think people don't expect that out of a company in that business. I think what they do expect is that you're doing your best not to have a negative impact on the environment. So I think those are some of the things you shouldn't get away from what your footprint and impact are, and you should be thinking about that and not trying to market something that's not realistic to what your business is. So one of the other things is that, people are going to be skeptical anyway. There's a lot of distrust of corporations today, given the past history. It's probably a legitimate concern among people, given everything that's happened with the economy. And so people are going to be skeptical of what you say. So just assume that from the beginning. Where possible, replace trust with accountability. So don't say, oh, trust us, we're doing these things, we're wonderful, we care about this. Just put the information up and be accountable to it, and be accountable to being measured by it is a lot better than making me trust you. So if you say, hey, our emissions are this, or we have these environmental controls, we're doing these great things, well, show me the website or the emission numbers that actually demonstrate that you're doing this. Don't just expect me to trust you. And if you're in a company that's kind of having a challenge with trust, I think having someone else verify or speak to what you're doing is probably more powerful than you or even a government agency, because there's not a lot of trust in governments right now either. Number 6, define what you want to achieve with your sustainability comms. That's something that's not often thought about, but what actually is your goal? Who are you trying to reach? What do you want them to perceive at the end of the day? The item number 7 is your employees. Often we forget about employees, but if you can't convince the employees, you're not going to be able to convince anyone else, and there's going to be a strong disconnect in the culture if you're running around marketing how green and wonderful the company is, and the employees are getting their injured in equipment and getting laid off and other things. There's just going to be a disconnect there, and once again, disconnects lead to future problems. The item 8, the more you promote yourself, the more people are going to look at you and scrutinize your efforts. So be prepared for that. If you want to go out and talk about all the green things you're doing, then people, I think, are naturally going to want to poke around at some of the things that may be less green that you're doing. So you got to make sure you're solid, and all these things seem to tie together. There's a lot of legal requirements now about green marketing, sustainability marketing, so you need to be obviously aware of that. And then the final one here is that if you want your sustainability comms to be sustainable, then social media is definitely a place to be involved and to be active as we are today. So that's if you want to kind of keep that message and discussion going, you need to be active in social media. I'm going to stop there and give Dave a chance to speak.
Well, thank you so much, Gary, and now we'll hear from Dave.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Shel. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what side of the country you're on. I think you're going to hear some similarities in terms of these presentations. They both have the same title in terms of are they buying your sustainability story, but I do think that most people, even in our world, in the CSR and sustainability world, when they hear this concept of green marketing or the sustainability story, they automatically jump.
David, could I just ask you to just speak a little louder and closer to the microphone?
Sure, I'll do my best. Is that any better?
Yes. Okay.
I think when most people talk about, or the connotation people get when they hear sustainability story or green marketing, they automatically go to the product and what green labels, what's on the market, what's in the marketplace for people to adjust. And I think I want to try to expand that concept for you a little bit, as well as Gary did. You can go to the next slide, or I don't think just Shel mentioned, or I think it was even mentioned at the very beginning as this slide kind of builds, Campbell is more than just Campbell Soup Company. We are Campbell Soup Company, but we're also Goldfish as well as Swanson, Tim Tams, and Arnott's in Australia, several brands in Europe as well. We have about, if you can kind of advance one more slide, that would help.
Yeah, Dave, you should see the two arrows. You could advance your own, I believe. Can you see the arrows?
No, I'm looking for them.
Okay, then.
If they show up, I'll definitely take over.
Okay, we'll work on them.
Okay. Here on slide 10, we're about 17,000 employees in 20 countries, so smaller footprint. We sell products in 120 countries worldwide. Been around for a long time in this space. The company was actually founded 140. The other thing I've laid out on this slide is the company's 7 business strategies. It's a little hard to read, but I've tried to highlight areas where you see CSR and sustainability play out, and it plays out not only in one, where we have a core strategy around CSR and sustainability. That's strategy number 7. A lot that drives that I'll talk about, or could see it sprinkled throughout, from workplace diversity to wellness to value in terms of access to good health in here as well. This is a nice framework for me in terms of driving the sustainability story, because much of what the company is actually doing on a day-to-day basis has a social or a sustainable mission. So we're able to build in this language around mission-driven. And I'm not going to share all of the slides and content that we have here, but I will be happy to share just to give you the context of how it's played out. So I'm not going to talk through all of the detail on the next slide, but you can see the framework that we're working in. We have 4 main pillars for CSR and sustainability. 3 is what you should expect from any CSR strategy worth its salt in terms of tangible efforts in environment, in the communities in which we live and work, in society, and in the workplace, and then where a lot of what we're talking about today really meets the road marketplace. And I'm not going to touch on our long-term strategies in all these areas, but we've identified 10-year goals in these areas. That all of this is building a framework for how we're able to communicate going forward. All the things I've discussed, being aligned with the social mission of the company. What is the value add that the company has to society? Are there functional and communication pillars around those strategies? What you do inside, what you do outside, the impacts you have, and the benefits that you can bring external to customers, consumers, and supply chain. This all helps to build the framework for how we're doing communication. And then building really on, the first word on this slide is basically a translation of several of the bullets Gary put on his slide. Authenticity and accuracy. If you cannot be authentic and accurate, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You would have gotten yourself in trouble in the past, and with more structure and guidance around green claims in the marketplace, you're going to get yourself more in trouble in the future. We have an active standing claims review process in the company. It's probably similar to other consumer products companies. I'm not aware of every claim we're going to make inside this company on a product package, in an advertisement, goes through a legal, marketing, kind of a lens to look at sustainability. If we're going to make an environmental claim, I'll be involved, and we look at everything we're going to say and test it in these ways. And we'll often dial down some of the claims that the marketing side of the company wants to make authentic and overly accurate. That's in the marketplace, but there's much more to do in terms of building a strategy. And I think what you're seeing, I know what I'm driving here and what you're seeing at some other companies, integrating sustainability into the community outlets and the strategy and looking at it from almost a year-long calendar perspective. What are we saying inside the company? What are we saying outside the company? Where do we integrate sustainability and reinforce the messages that we want, as Gary said, our stakeholders? One example, we've added a little boilerplate to all of our press releases that remind people about our CSR and sustainability strategy so that they see it every time they see a camel. We're also moving to more active communication vehicles as well. That was mentioned before. It's a way to break up the mass of communication messages into audiences that really need them and can interact with them. One of the goals is really to educate our stakeholders, our entire value chain, value proposition, not just what are we doing, but why. If we can't make that connection, we just get lost in the noise. The other thing I'm building here is all of my employees have a role, an active role. Executives to have an active communication role. Whether it's my CIO or my CFO or the CEO, how do they fold this into communications that they're having with teams or externally? And that requires resourcing these people, executives or internal business groups, as they advance up this learning curve. So you can't just ask them to go out and talk about sustainability. They have to understand their strengths, their weaknesses inside the company, drivers are outside the company. We actually have done some board of directors education session.
Fading out again, Dave.
Okay, sorry about that. And we've educated the board on external drivers and what that means in terms of how the strategy plays out inside the company. Then we also, I just kind of close on this last point, I think that sustainability communications over the last several decades have been focused on reporting for the most part. And as companies are getting more sophisticated, technology is getting more sophisticated, and frankly, the need has always been there. We should always be building audience-based communication plans. What do we need employees to know and act on and learn? What do we need our stakeholders to understand in terms of our expectations, and how can we communicate to them? Same thing with customer and consumer, as well as executives. And this list could go on and on. You could put thought leadership, you could put regulatory stakeholders. But I think instead of thinking of here's our sustainability story, how do we get people to buy it, what are the audiences and what do we want that particular audience to know about our sustainability story, and how can we advance it? And I think that's my last slide, Shel. I will stop there and turn it back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Okay. I've got some questions for both of you while we're waiting to see if anybody else has questions. So for either of you or both of you can take a whack at this one. How does sustainability fit into the overall profit picture of a modern company?
Gary, do you want to go?
Dave, you want to go?
Sure. No, you said the profit picture, right, Shel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that if people like Gary and I cannot make the case to just about anybody that asks that there are ways to build that sustainability has an active role in profit, both in terms of direct profit, in terms of here are specific examples of where our sustainability strategy has added to the bottom line or have taken away cost, almost like a balance statement. Very specific examples year over year. Here's the money we have saved. Here's the way it's focused into a campaign to generate additional revenue or attract better employee, or maybe even retention, where you're actually talking about productivity on the direct side, and on the indirect side, where you're talking about brand reputation, consumer affinity. We all have the ability now to poll and communicate with our consumers or our customers if we're B2B businesses like Campbell and Intel. We have the ability to measure that today. And we should all be able to not just try to justify it, but actually show both direct and indirect ties to the performance of the company from profit, as well as several other metrics depending on the person looking inside the company.
Yeah, I agree with what Dave said on that. I think there's, the things, reducing energy and saving and reducing packaging, and it's lighter to ship, and you save money, and those things are very easy, and I think those are the things companies focus on first. But then there are those longer-term issues of brand and innovation, and how do you potentially sell products to different markets you haven't been in before, and understanding their needs and the needs of the society they're working in. I mean, that's all a part of the greater sustainability kind of picture, that by understanding those issues, you're going to make better business decisions long term.
Coming from my perspective as a outside the corporate world solopreneur who works with very small businesses, I think another piece of that is that often the marketplace wants to do business with companies that are on a sustainability path. So the more that you can demonstrate that you are, in fact, on this path, the more people will beat a path to your door and, in fact, tell their friends and colleagues to do business with you. So that, to me, is another piece of it. Gary, you mentioned that companies who have problems with trust can bring in outside verification services. I'd like to flip that around, if I could, and have you address the question of how can you build a company that is trustworthy enough that you don't necessarily need someone else saying, oh, yeah, they're doing it right, that people believe you.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because I think if you read some of the polls on how consumers feel about corporations and how much trust there is, my understanding is pretty near an all-time low. And given the kind of economic meltdown we had in not only the U.S., around the world, and the companies that we found out were doing things that were not right, I think that's really a difficult challenge to have someone just blatantly trust you. I try to look at corporations like I do people. And you develop a relationship with someone, and when they respond to you in a certain way, and when they do things that you think are the right thing, over time you build trust. And it's not by what kind of clothes they're wearing or what kind of slick car they're driving. It's really kind of being responsible and doing things that you think are trustworthy over time. So I think the best thing that companies can do to gain trust is really treat your employees fairly, treat your customers fairly, kind of this basic thing around really codes of conduct, and how you manage to those fundamental components of just doing the right thing are far more important than how do you market something. I think eventually over time you can build on that core of trust, but I think that's clearly what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Dave, anything you'd like to add? And Dave, I might mention that another listener on the line said that they're having some problems hearing you. So
yeah, I see that.
Loud and
Okay, I think for some reason the three of us are blaring in each other's ears, but our sound is not reaching the general attendees. But I think the point is well made by Gary, that basically trust is earned over time. And even if it is a marketing campaign, there are several examples in the cases today, even in the CSR space, where marketing has over time built trust. But that's really not. It's almost a perceived trust. I think if the behavior matches the words, if the actions match the words and the expectations of the company, trust will be earned. It's a little bit easier to see that trust play out in business relationships and direct customer relationships than in the consumer space. We also all know that trust can be lost much easier than it can be earned over time. So I think this consistent, both direct, authentic communication, and then backing up those communications with words. I mean, I talk about inside this company the kind of brand promise that people, and every company has it, whether they have a consumer brand that's well known around the world or not. People expect that product, whatever it is, if it's a piece of technology or food, to behave in a certain way, to deliver on that promise. And as companies, we need to continue to reinforce that promise over and over and over. As soon as we don't, as soon as a consumer perceives that that product isn't upholding their promise, they'll move to another product.
Mm-hmm. So what you're really talking about is being authentic, being transparent, having integrity. And that's a great lead into the next question, also for Dave. You mentioned a couple of core points, your mission revolving around sustainability. You had 4 points. 2 of them were improving the health of young people and cutting your corporate environmental footprint in half. Can you say a bit about how practically to do some of those things?
Yeah, the latter is a little bit easier than the former, so I'll start with that. We've actually defined the footprint here in terms of our manufacturing footprint, and our goal is to basically use half the amount of water and emit half the greenhouse gases that we do in 10 years for every ton of food produced that we do today. So it really is that can of food, that can of soup you're used to seeing, or that bag of goldfish. 10 years from now, it should take half as much water or half as much greenhouse gas emissions to produce that product. We have a bunch of other goals in this space around sustainable packaging and sustainable agriculture and waste generation and recycling. But what we're really trying to drive is the footprint, water and energy / greenhouse gas emissions in half on the environmental side. The other one you mentioned, improving the health of young people, is really trying to push this concept of, take this concept of social impact and make it a reality, and put tension in the system, creative, innovative tension in the system, and hold ourselves to metrics that we can actually make a difference. A lot of companies are doing a lot of great things in the community, spending lots of money, giving away lots of in-kind donations, volunteering tons of hours. We actually want to try to measure an impact. Mm-hmm. So we're actually trying to measure an impact in hunger and childhood obesity in 10 North American communities. Can we actually move that needle with a bunch of partners and an agreed set of metrics, taking the best lessons that we can try to drive in a system here in Camden and apply them across the country? And we're trying to hold ourselves accountable to it. So we're going to share, our successes and our failures in trying to measure that social impact. And I think you're going to see that in a lot of places.
Does that also have anything to do with the possibilities of, say, reformulating some of the products to lower salt or fat?
Well, there's a whole other side. So one of the other 2 pillars you didn't mention, one is workplace. We'll leave that on the side for now, and the other is marketplace. That there we're signing up to continually advance the nutrition profile of our products, continually, year over year for the next 10 years. And it's not only formulating every time we get a chance, reformulate a product so that we take away a negative, whether it's sodium or fats, but also introduce positives in terms of nutrition gaps, vegetable nutrition, antioxidants, whole grains, fiber, things like that. And we're building a metric set around that, so you'll be able to clearly see where Campbell has been and where they're going. And I think that's true. If we could get to the point of measuring social impacts in the consumer space, the problem is we're not the only company selling food products. But that's really, I think that's the ultimate. And I think that investors, stakeholders, employees are going to be able to start to see what this company at least is trying to do in the marketplace as well.
Okay, for both of you, what strategies and tactics have worked really well and what not so well?
I think the strategies that have worked well are when things line up that are really core to your business. So and for us, an example of that is people want mobile devices like laptops and things that you can hop on a plane and use that for 12 hours flying over the Atlantic or somewhere else and not have to need to worry about the battery. Reducing the energy demand of that product also is good for the environment. So, designing more energy efficient microprocessors that have a smaller energy footprint to go into devices that are lighter, smaller, quicker, more powerful, that you can then run without needing to charge it for a long time. I mean, all those things are direct line with consumers that want, our customers want. It's better for the environment. I think that's it. So look for the areas that have the most alignment to touch a number of items in the company that are core to what it does. And I think the failure parts are when you try to do a one-off program that someone gets excited about or thinks there's a great opportunity, but it doesn't touch other parts of your core business or are not aligned with your core business. So I think that's the best rule to follow.
Gary, what you did is just actually confirm one of the points that I made at the beginning, which is that the strongest messaging that we can do in sustainability is messaging that focuses jointly on the benefit to the consumer as well as the benefit to the earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. It's another way to say it is look for the win-win-win. In the consumer product space, it's oftentimes packaging. We can make some amazing changes in packaging. Our employees get excited about it. Our customers, the retailers that we sell it to, are excited about it. It lets them tell their story, and consumers can actually interact with it. We can do a lot of great things in our factories, in our workplace, but it oftentimes the consumers don't get to interact with it. So that really helps as well.
Okay, how, Dave, does a consumer interact with a bread wrapper or a soup can?
Well, they see it every day. I mean, the soup can's a great example. If not everybody has a soup can in front of them like me, but if you were to take a look at that, soup can and read just some of the content that's on that label, in addition to trying to clean up ingredients and move to more healthy ingredients, you're going to see the fact that it's made with 100% steel that's 100% recyclable, or perhaps the label is made with recycled content, and some post-consumer material. The other thing you're going to see is some language on the lid that you take off that's reminding consumers that this package that they for years maybe have thrown in the garbage, they need to throw it in the recycle bin, because the more they recycle it, the more we can recycle it. And then when we talk to consumers about the initiatives, when we have a chance to communicate, we changed a Pepperidge Farm pack. I mean, we've changed hundreds of packages, and there's great examples. But one that's targeted, another point is targeting your communications. So we changed the size and the material of a Pepperidge Farm goldfish carton, and we shrunk it down a little bit. We used less material. We switched from some virgin renewable material to recycled material, and we're able to calculate with some help from our suppliers and some external calculators just the amount, 500,000 pounds of fiber and $500,000 in just savings over 1 year in packaging. But we're able to put a little story on that package. No green label. Not trying to greenwash it, and we didn't even include like how many trees saved, because that's where we try to be extra conservative. But we did communicate to the kids that look at this thing that this package is better than the last package. It uses less material, and that has the ability to save some trees. And their language with communication targeted to them, not to sell the product, it's on the back side. It's a way to let people know what they can expect going forward. And there's a lot more innovative packages across the entire consumer product sector. These are just a couple of, the tens of examples inside our company.
I think one of the important things when you hear Dave speak, too, he talks, too, about the content, the sodium and fat and those things that are really important. And you don't want to get so off on one end of the scale that you're talking about these labels and tin recycled, and not forget those core things about food, nutrition, and value, and safety, and things like that. I think it's always important that you have some balancing going on there between those messages.
Okay, good. Our organizer here, John Gerstner, asks a question: is the CSR annual report going to go away, be folded into a company's annual report, or what?
I wish it would go away, but only because I have to work on putting one together. But that's an interesting question. The bottom line is here that the financial reports are driven by a set of requirements and standards, and we've been doing it for a while. And then to take voluntary guidelines, and we do ours, in accordance with the GRI G3, and to then mesh something that is voluntary that, how you define materiality and things can be completely different. So I don't see, although I'm not necessarily opposed to it at some day, but I don't see anytime soon those reports coming together, because I just think it's very difficult to take something that is a legal requirement and with specifics outlined through the SEC, and then voluntary guidelines that are opened up to a lot of interpretation, and combine those. And the real question, I know the SRI, Social Responsible Investment crowd, and others are excited about this topic, but the question you really got to ask yourself is that our annual report, essentially a 10K with a letter from the CEO and chairwoman, and how much are these things actually going to be read? And it's nice to say they're combined, but once again, what does that do for people reading them and getting information?
Yeah, I agree, Shel. I've had people talk to me. I have this conversation I don't know how many times, and a lot of it is with people that are really positive on the concept of integrated reporting. And Gary and I have been doing this maybe too long, but the reality is we've all would like to have integrated reporting. If you take a look at we're just finishing up the Campbell annual report. Now, it reads like a CSR report. It talks about what we're doing in the workplace, what we're doing in the marketplace around health and nutrition, and what we do in the community. That's the language of it. It is an integrated report, but it is not the end. The efforts like GRI, which are very strong and have been around for decades now, trying to drive reporting, actually they drive an effort against integrated reporting. They don't. That's not their intended effort. But to do a full report for the way investors are tracking us now, and GRI would like to track us now, you're talking 100 pages at the minimum of content, and that's answering half of what we should be reporting on. The reality is, I don't think it's going to get in my career in the United States. It's not going to get there. It may get closer if it's mandated. The other dynamic that Gary didn't mention, but I know is happening at Intel and at Campbell and at other companies, is ESG, environmental, social, and governance concepts, are growing in the 10K. So there's more disclosure showing up in the 10K around climate, around energy. So that report is getting broader, but I just don't see the two ever coming together in the near term.
We've got time for one more questions, and I'd like to ask you guys, you both work for very large corporations with lots of resources. What advice would you give to the solopreneur, or to the person who has 10 employees, who does not have a big marketing department and lots of people they can tap?
Yeah, Dave, you got a huge organization. Why don't you?
Yeah, I got one person. I got one person over here. I think that there's no reason that the frameworks that we have discussed, in terms of the 10 suggestions, Gary, the 10 tips Gary pointed out, and some of the concepts I described in terms of taking a look at your audience, what your strengths are, what you want to be known for, what is your role really in the business community. Even if I'm a small office supply, store front in a small town, I can still ask myself that question. What's most important to my customers? What's most important to the people that walk past my store every day? What can I do here to drive some change around behavior in my small workforce? You don't need to have a big, trust me, right, on this one, I'm speaking from experience, you do not need to have a big social responsibility department to drive some of this. The more authentic you can be and the more tied to your business you can be, the more success you're going to have anyway. Great answer. Gary, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I agree that we still have a lot of innovation that's going on by individuals and departments. This isn't some big, large operation at the top that, you move some gears and things and they all jump. People are making decisions every day to do things. We're just talking about the person that manages our fleet vehicles for Salesforce and getting in a lot more hybrids and how much gasoline they're going to save in the fleet. And this is just something they kind of did on their own. And I know Dave has experience too, I'm sure, is we go around, trip into things and hear about things that are going on at big companies in this area. So there's certainly opportunities for small companies to pick pieces of this and implement it.
Yeah, Michelle, I apologize to you. All I can see is your name here. My chat screen got covered again, and I cannot read what you wrote. We have only two. There we go. Oh, she just said thank you. Okay. Yeah, so the last question, and then we'll turn the panel back over to John to introduce the next session. You guys work in very different sectors. Technology on one hand, food and beverage on the other. What is transferable to all industries, and what really is kind of specific? And you've got 30 seconds each.
This is Dave. There's actually quite a bit that's transferable in the communication side, especially at the high level that we've been talking about. I do think that it does get tricky when you're trying to talk about your brand promise to your audience. That's not transferable. The skills in terms of how to get it right are transferable, but the messages, the vectors, the way you communicate, the stakeholders, the thought leaders are all different. So there's a lot of kind of networking relationship that has to go on, but the skill sets, I think, are consistent. You can transfer them. I sure hope so. I'm trying.
Well, Dave, you're proof of that, having come from high tech to now a food company, right?
That's the plan.
All right, well, I thank everybody for listening. I'm going to give the microphone back to John, who will introduce the next session, and I hope you found this useful.
Thank you, all three of you. Excellent information. I think it's just building